Good morning and good afternoon, everybody, depending on your time zone. Thank you all for joining. You've joined the EnablePath CPQ Success webinar. Along with Salesforce and IO Education, we'll be presenting some real-world stories and some overview capabilities of Salesforce CPQ. We do still have some folks joining. I can see the attendee list growing a little bit. We'll give them another 1 minute, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, everybody, thanks for waiting. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Kevin Smith. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing here for EnablePath. I'm going to host the webinar today, and we've got some other folks that are going to be participating that I'll introduce in just a moment. I am looking at the attendee list. I see that we've got some folks joining us that typically do join our webinar series, so for those folks, welcome back. For some of the folks that this is your first of our webinars, thanks for coming on. We do a series of webinars, both on releases, some specific Salesforce subjects, ecosystem news, and we do them as a means to try to add value to the Salesforce ecosystem in total. Typically, we have some folks from Salesforce as attendees. We have some clients. We have some future clients. At times, we even have competitors join the webinars, which is fine with us. We really take the position that providing value-added service makes us mutually significant to our clients, to our partners, and in the ecosystem. For those of you that don't know EnablePath, I'll just take a quick 30 seconds to let you know. We are the Salesforce consulting arm of Burlesoft. Burlesoft is a global IT services firm, and we're US-based here. We're a platinum consulting partner with Salesforce. Quite a few projects. I won't read all the bullets, but you can see we've done a lot of projects. We've got a great customer satisfaction rating. We do a lot of repeat business, and we really try to stay in pace with Salesforce as they deploy their new technologies, including CPQ, and that is the subject of our discussion today. Presenting today, we've got John Helena on with us. He's the CPQ practice lead here at EnablePath. John does a great job and is very focused on CPQ. He stays in step with Salesforce, in step with our delivery resources, making sure that we maintain our certifications, that we are growing our practice, which we are substantially. Again, myself, Kevin Smith, I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing here. We also have Andy Mitchell on, and Andy is the Sales Operations Manager at IO Education, and just went through, IO just did a deployment of CPQ, of Salesforce CPQ, and he's going to talk about some of the real-world experiences in deploying it and the success and benefits they've seen from it. We also have Matt Mayuri on with us. He's an account executive from Salesforce and our resident expert, if you will, on Salesforce CPQ services. John's going to lead our webinar, and with that, I am going to hand it over to John to begin the webinar. You can ask questions. If you do note on the dialog box, the GoToWebinar dialog box, there is a question area. Go ahead and post those. We will take the questions and answer them, provided we have time at the end of the webinar. And I think we probably will. I think we've probably got maybe 30 minutes of good content, and we should have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. So with that, I'm going to introduce John Helena, practice head for the CPQ practice here at EnablePath.
Thanks, Kevin. So the agenda today is very simple, straightforward. First, we're going to start off with Matt. He's going to give you an overview on Salesforce's quote to cash. Then we'll hand it over. Andy and I will be talking about their implementation this year, and then we'll open it up for questions. So let me go ahead and pass it over to Matt. All right, Matt, you should be presenter now.
Thanks, John. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody across the country who's attending this webinar. As our friends at EnablePath told you, my name is Matt Mayuri. To give you a little background on me, I'm an account executive covering the Southeast for Salesforce CPQ. Some of you may know us as Steelbrick. Some of you may be curious as to how this became a part of the Salesforce ecosystem. So just to provide a little bit of background, CPQ was once a category in the Salesforce ecosystem of companies trying to solve a specific problem that customers had. And the marketplace changed quite a bit with the acquisition of SteelBrick by Salesforce in February of this year. So those of you who attended the Salesforce halftime show to kick off the year might have heard Mark Benioff talk a little bit about why Salesforce acquired SteelBrick. And it's something that we're frequently sharing in and around the ecosystem. So for those of you who might be confirmed about terminology, today's webinar is to talk about CPQ. Salesforce quote to cash is a term that gets thrown around as our business unit title, and that pertains to customers who use both our CPQ, which is native on the Salesforce platform, and also our subscription billing applications. So to give you guys a little bit of color around what the problem is and why we sought out to solve it, the traditional Salesforce customer has a very significant gap between their adoption of traditional CRM and how they use Salesforce and data that gets entered in their ERP or backend systems. And the source of this problem is quite simple. When Salesforce first launched the platform in the early 2000s, subscription management and complex quoting were really the last things on the company's mind. And they were seeking to build a functional CRM. So what most customers have done and are still doing is leaving the platform or highly customizing the platform to manage their complex quoting processes, complex pricing scenarios, document generation, and in many cases, their entire business process flow through to approvals, contracting, and billing. So we sometimes refer to this as the quote to cash gap or the CPQ gap. And it's a functional limitation in the historical capabilities of the Salesforce platform. So when SteelBrick set out to solve this problem, we set out to build applications that worked out of the box simply and easily and were deployed via managed package so that it doesn't require a Salesforce customer to leave the platform. Now, some of you might be wondering, doesn't Salesforce have a native quote object? And what's wrong with that? Well, it's not that there's necessarily anything wrong with Salesforce native quotes, but CPQ is a significant functionality enhancement for customers who sell things like bundles and have complex pricing scenarios that aren't solved with a simple out-of-the-box quoting scenario that involves grabbing a set of products and services for the customer. Many customers are driven to CPQ because they have a more unique scenario when it comes to bundling products and services for their customers, and they want to embed that logic in the application. So I think this slide highlights and demonstrates some of the unique scenarios that customers have which require the deployment of a CPQ application as opposed to the simpler deployment of Salesforce native quotes or managing this process from a manual solution like Excel or with Salesforce customization. So you're going to learn a lot about IO Education's specific story, but I think you'll learn that they have a lot of these elements in their organization. They bundle products and services. They sell subscription services as opposed to one-time items. And they have other complex needs that aren't solved with out-of-the-box functionality. When it comes to the product itself, it really stands on three core pillars that are key to its successful and inexpensive deployment and solving the customer challenges that we've outlined already. So CPQ is certainly not something that's brand new to the ecosystem. This is a next generation approach to CPQ because it uses the standard objects in Salesforce, like opportunities, products, and price books, and that the application is 100% native on Force so that it works out of the box and is deployed quickly and easily. If you contrast these considerations with historical CPQ providers, they've also built CPQ in many cases to handle complex manufacturing scenarios and other legacy applications. Most CPQ customers today are in the subscription business in some way, shape, or form. So a huge differentiator for Salesforce CPQ is that the concept of time is built into the solution. Subscription management is a big consideration for a lot of our customers, and the deployment of Salesforce CPQ introduces subscriptions to this standard products object in Salesforce, which allows customers to add for things like, to incorporate things like add-ons and renewals as part of their native sales process without leaving the Salesforce platform. Another key development that the acquisition introduced in the Salesforce acquisition of SteelBrick is that the development schedule is now 100% aligned with Salesforce. So new releases, functional deployments on things like the Lightning platform and on the mobile device have become much simpler and easier with the acquisition of SteelBrick by Salesforce. Here in the SteelBrick division, we've long been surveying our customers, and again, you're going to hear one specific customer story, but the achievements that a traditional CPQ customer self-reports are actually really significant qualitative and quantitative achievements for their business. At the end of the day, customers deploy a CPQ solution because they want to simplify and automate quoting, make it easier for data that they gather in the front end of their process and in pre-sales to put that data back in their back-end systems and manage the ordering process. And ultimately, customers want to make sure that they produce a proposal for their customers that have the right set of products and services and the correct pricing 100% of the time. So CPQ customers are self-reporting a lot of qualitative and quantitative benefits associated with the implementation of a CPQ application. And you're going to hear a little bit more about a specific story today. So with that, hopefully it's a functional overview of the product and the services that we offer here in the CPQ group. I'll certainly be available for questions, but I'm going to use that to pass the presenter back to John, who I think is going to pick it up.
Thanks, Matt. All right, now I'll introduce Andy Mitchell. He's the Sales Operations Manager for IO Education. He's going to talk a little bit about who they are and how they implemented CPQ this year and why. Andy?
Hey, thanks, John, and thanks, Matt. It's been a pleasure working with both of these guys over the last 6 months or so, I guess. And just to kind of give you a brief introduction on who IO is and what we do, IO is a K-12 education technology company, and we help educators make effective use of all the data that they have. We do that through a couple of different methods. We collect the data through assessments that we've developed and our partners provide through our platform. And so we do that at the student, teacher, and principal level. And we also have a technology platform that collects existing data and aggregates it into a single system so that educators can kind of have that more holistic view of student profiles. John, if you want to go to the next slide, just to kind of give you guys an introduction, I guess, as to why we started looking at SteelBrick, now Salesforce CPQ, and working with EnablePath. IO was formed as a result of various mergers and acquisitions, and we're actually made up of 6 different companies. 3 of those have occurred in the last 12 months. So we've had a very high rate of growth. We've got a lot of new team members that we're working to integrate, as well as product lines, and we're adding new folks every day. So as you can imagine, that added some complexity to our sales process. And in addition, some of those products already had their own complex pricing structures. One business unit that we have in particular has what Matt mentioned as bundled products. So we have multiple packages that are different depending on whether we're talking with an elementary school or high school. Those have different prices for different ranges of students. So you've got a mix of products, you've got a mix of prices based on enrollment, and then you also have a mix of choices within those bundles. So, you might have in one package 3 to 5 standard products that we offer, and then the client can pick from 3 to 5 optional products. So they might pick 1 of 3 options or 2 of 3 options. So with all that complexity, we needed something just to get everybody on the same page and simplify that part of the process. So as a result of all that complexity, we really had a very manually intensive quoting and invoice process. We didn't have pricing rules that were easily enforceable and obvious to our sales reps. So a lot of times our vice president of sales and finance team had much more involvement than they really needed to have on those individual transactions. We didn't have a way to quote a customer automatically. Our account executives and our reps were piecing quotes together and basically calculating everything themselves on templates that marketing had generated and then sending that along as a PDF. So we needed to streamline that. We had one actually very messy example where an entire business unit was using invoices as quotes. And so on a verbal commitment from a customer, we'd send invoices out, and sometimes, most of the time, they would actually get paid, but sometimes they wouldn't. So as you can imagine, though, that's not necessarily the best business practice. It was kind of creating some headaches for our AR and collections teams, and our aging reports weren't as accurate because we were using invoices instead of quotes. So we needed to tighten that up as well.
Andy, we met earlier this year. You guys were in a hurry to get this going as quickly as possible. Can you talk about some of the pressures you had?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think our CFO began talking with Matt and talking with you guys at EnablePath in April or May and working to scope a solution. And, as I mentioned, we had all of these teams we were just beginning to integrate. We were starting to cross-sell into our customers. So because we now had all these different product lines, we wanted to take those different products back to customers that we already had from other lines. And the fiscal year for schools, because we are in the education business, starts July 1st. So our conversations started late April, early May, and we were up against a window and basically said, by the way, guys, we need to do this quickly. So I can't say enough about, what Matt and you guys at EnablePath did for us to help us meet that deadline.
All right, Andy. So we heard about your problems. Can we kind of encapsulate some of your key goals?
Yeah, so with all that, our goal was really just to automate our product configurations, all those options and bundles that we had. We needed to standardize our price list. We needed to tighten up our sales process and eliminate errors that were creeping through. And then we needed to enforce that across our organization with all of our sales executives and all the new hires that we had. So our approach in doing that was that we also needed to meet the needs of the sales team by standardizing quote templates. We needed to give them the ability to have multiple quotes on the table for each opportunity. We wanted to use Salesforce CPQ and the product configurator to set up those product options and pricing rules, take some of that workload off of our vice president of sales, off of our finance team, so that those approvals weren't necessary. They were already baked into what we set up through CPQ. And we wanted to make that very simple and easy for the reps. And so by doing that, we needed to give them also that flexibility, which I would say is automatic flexibility to apply those discounts when necessary, but at the same time, enforce profitability. So, and then finally, another thing we wanted to do was to feed all those details directly into our accounting platform. So with EnablePath's help, we've been able to roll out SteelBrick Salesforce CPQ, and when an opportunity is closed won, that directly feeds right into our accounting system. We don't have to manually create invoices anymore. All the product details go right into NetSuite. Emails are sent out to the clients, and it's all automated from there.
All right, great, Andy. All right, so now you've been live since July. You can talk about some of the benefits that you've experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, we got up and running in about 6 weeks once work really began, and since then, we've really been focused on getting our customers up and running and making sure that they're well supported. But just some of the things that we've already been able to do is lower our operating expenses. We've literally cut our quote creation to a fraction of the time of what it used to take. Our pipeline, we have improved visibility. With our current ops, they're more accurate. and our renewal opportunities are already teed up for 2017. That's one of the things that EnablePath also helped us to do, was to kind of engineer a way for those renewals and those subscriptions to automatically roll over to the next year and have the close date automatically applied to that.
All right, great. So what's next on the roadmap for you?
So for us, I think we want to explore the mobile quoting option. Our reps have laptops, but they also have mobile devices. They're right now just kind of as a first pass. They've been building those quotes from their browser, but we'd like to explore some mobile options there. We have the automatic renewals already set up in the system, so we know when our deals are going to be up for renewal in 2017, but we want to also look at automating those quotes to be sent via email 90 days out, 60 days out, 30 days, in advance of that anniversary date. We're also looking at some supplemental proposal tools to support those quote documents. We would like to bring in some dynamic marketing content, product descriptions based on what's been quoted in the CPQ quote line items. And another thing that EnablePath has started with us and we've tested and have been using on a limited basis is a DocuSign integration. So directly from the quote object, once the client gets that, we've got DocuSign built in and they can electronically sign that. We'd like to expand the use of that and roll that out to the entire organization for back to school 2017.
All right, so now I'd like to open up for questions. Hopefully these are problems that a lot of you can relate to. So Kevin or Michelle, if you could take a look at the questions and rattle those off, and between Matt, myself, and Andy, hopefully we can answer them.
Sure thing. Thanks, John. We did have a question come in from Dan. He was asking that his group often has multiple quotes for the same deal or same opportunity, and wanted to know how you're managing that, and was that fairly manageable with Salesforce CPQ?
Yeah, absolutely.
Andy, I'll let you take that one.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of times, because again we're working with schools and school districts across the country, you can imagine that a sales rep goes out and might have 3 or 4 different products that are on the table. So with Salesforce CPQ, they can create multiple quotes under the same opportunity. There is a checkbox on the quote object where even though they have maybe 3 deals on the table, there's a flag marked primary, so when the rep checks that primary checkbox, that's what's actually forecasted in the pipeline. And it's real easy too, by the way, if you wanted to switch, let's say you've forecasted something, your primary quote, that's what's showing up in your pipeline, and the customer actually chooses one of those other options. The only thing that the rep has to do at that point is just mark the primary checkbox on a different quote, and those products are automatically written to the opportunity.
Excellent. Thanks, Andy. Hang on, we got a couple more that came in as well. We had a question come in. Can you explain in more detail about the automated subscription renewals that you had mentioned?
Sure. So again, with EnablePath's help, one of the things we wanted to do was just tee those opportunities up for the next year. And once a deal is closed won, we also do this with a checkbox. We have a contracted checkbox on the opportunity. When finance receives a purchase order or a signed contract, marks it closed won, the only thing they have to do is check that contracted box. From there, a contract is automatically generated. They set the renewal opportunity for next year. There are 2 more check boxes. One's called forecasted and one called renewal quoted. And they check those 2 boxes, save it. It automatically creates the opportunity with those products for next year, and it places the Salesforce CPQ quote on that opportunity as well.
And then we had another one come in. It's kind of in line with that one, and it was a follow-up from Rosie. does your pricing change year to year on quotes? And if so, how do you automate that, on renewal? Is there percentage increases or dollar increases, or is there manual intervention at that time on the renewal? Or have you guys even tackled that yet, I guess?
So for us, this is our first year using it. We don't anticipate raising or changing any prices for next school year. I know there is some functionality that's automatically built in to Salesforce CPQ where you can have an uplift or a discount applied. That might be something, Matt, if you want to answer that, what functionality is available.
Sure, I don't mind chiming in. There is functionality available for that. We call it the renewal uplift functionality, and it's mastered by both the subscription and the contract. So a common real-world scenario is if a software customer sells a deal, and let's say they negotiate a baked-in 5% uplift. Well, based on the customer's settings, if they're applicable for uplift pricing, when a renewal opportunity is created, the subscription items will populate into that renewal opportunity and automatically apply the 5% uplift. So that's one common scenario that we see, but there are other renewal uplift scenarios that are more complex that the application also has pre-built features to solve for.
Thanks, Matt. We also had another question came in. It was a general question from Steve, just asking if we were going to demo the product. We plan to in an upcoming webinar. Steve, we didn't at this time just for time's sake. We try to keep our webinars fairly succinct. Happy, though, to set that up. If you'd like for us to reach out, Matt has several demos available, and certainly John and the folks from EnablePath have them as well. But we're not planning to demo it today. But watch for the subsequent webinars as we do plan to pull it up and see it in the real world. We also had a question come in from Mark. And I don't know if this would be for Matt or for Andy. Regarding pricing rules, how easy is it for product marketing to administer or change the pricing and bundling rules?
Matt, you want to take that one?
Sure. Ease is a relative term, obviously. It's different for everyone, but the thing that most customers like about Salesforce CPQ is it functions as a pure extension of the Salesforce environment, which makes administration very easy for somebody who has an existing strong administrator skill set in-house. So typically, a customer will send an internal resource like Andy through CPQ product training. We've got a strong curriculum built out to enable internal administrators to make those kinds of little changes. But our mantra is clicks, not code. So as much as possible, we try to take common features that are needed by our customers and pre-build those types of features into the applications so that instead of writing code to change something, it's a checkbox or a drop-down menu. So in general, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. In case you don't have a strong Salesforce admin that Matt mentioned, we also offer in our managed services a concierge program, and we've got certified Salesforce CPQ consultants that you can work with, and they can help you with that.
Excellent, and excellent shameless plug, John. I like it. Also, we had another one come in from David. Did you say the entire implementation was completed in 6 weeks? Can you clarify, please, what was included in that? Was it just the CPQ or the Sales Cloud also, I think is a question. And then the follow-on to that for Andy was, who was involved from IO Education? What kind of internal resources were used in the team, and what kind of time was required of that internal team?
Sure. So a lot of those initial conversations that we started back in late April or early May were around the complexity of our bundle structures. So if I had to, say what took the most amount of time, it was us clarifying what those rules were and what those parameters were. With EnablePath's help, once we did that, it was really easy. And with Salesforce CPQ, as far as installing the package and having that part of our environment, that's super simple. So a lot of the work was on that side. As far as involvement, our CFO was involved in the process because it would ultimately feed into our accounting system. Our vice president of sales was also somewhat involved in the process just to make sure that he understood and knew what this tool would look like for the reps. But yeah, I mean, as far as the technical side of things, both Salesforce CPQ and EnablePath knew what they were doing and had it taken care of for us very quickly.
Excellent. Thanks, Andy. Let's see. We've got another one coming in here. Lisa asked, Lisa's in a finance approval position, and she's asked if you could talk a little bit more about the advanced approval process. And that one, I don't know if that may be for Matt, best to talk about what the capabilities are around advanced approval processing.
Sure, I can take that one. So Lisa, advanced approvals is a topic. It's also an add-on module that we offer customers. So I'll give you an example. Common customer scenario is, let's say a salesperson is going to offer the customer a discount that meets some threshold, say a 50% discount on some product. What a lot of customers want to build into their CPQ is, the ability to run that kind of a discount through an approvals process. And maybe that approvals process is serial in nature, where the manager needs to approve anything over 20%, and perhaps a 35% discount runs all the way up to finance. For these types of use cases, the Salesforce CPQ product uses the native approval functionality in Salesforce. Some of our customers who have really complex approval scenarios and approval processes in place that go beyond the limitations of the native Salesforce approvals process use an add-on module called Advanced Approvals, which allows for things like parallel approvers and smart approval. There are a lot of complex approval scenarios that can be achieved with the Advanced Approvals module. So if you want to email me or trade contact information, and that goes for anyone on this webinar, I'd be more than happy to send you a quick 4.5 minute video of one of our consultants actually talking about some of the common scenarios that we see in advanced approvals. It's a topic that can be its own rabbit hole. It can be very complex. But that's the nature of advanced approvals versus smart approvals. So, versus basic approvals. So in other words, most customers, very simple straight line approval process, but some larger, more complex customers have a more circumventable approval process that they need more advanced functionality to solve for.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, an example of what I've seen is there might be an approval process that needs to go to finance to change terms, payment terms, but the pricing needs to go through the VP of sales. So that process can happen in parallel with advanced approvals.
That's a great real world example, John. We had a follow-up from Rosie regarding the uplift, and she was asking, can you do complex uplift logic in CPQ out of the box, or if it's, maybe a barometer as to when it would require potentially custom code or triggers to handle complex uplift logic?
Good question. That can be a topic in and of itself. But basically, there's pre-built functionality to handle just about any kind of approval change. So there's a few mechanisms that are in place. You can set the application by default to renew your customers at the same price. You can renew them perhaps at the new list pricing when the time of their renewal rolls around. Or you can manage complex uplift and downlift scenarios that involve either increasing or decreasing the prices by parameters that you set up and choose. So that's the kind of topic that our experts will get into with you and figure out either A, do we support it, and B, how do we prove it out and show you. So either through your Salesforce AE or your quote to cash specialist, depending on where you are in the country, that's the kind of thing that they'll work with you individually on. Hopefully that helps.
I think it does. And Matt, I think I heard you say that logic can be driven off the subscription and the contract. So contract attributes as defined on the contract object are used to initiate at least, or as the basis for that complex logic. Is that accurate?
Yeah. In other words, you might have a customer-specific setting that governs, your rules around your broader customer, but your customer might have their own individual contracts with subscription uplifts that differ. So we allow you the level of granularity that you need to suit all the use cases without one global rule for your entire customer, because your customer might not have global requirements or global changes.
Gotcha. We've got a couple more coming in. I'm sensitive to us pushing past our original time slot. We're ready to keep going at least for another 3 or 4, as long as Matt, John, and Andy are. Gentlemen, you got time to take another 1 or 2? Excellent.
Sure.
Let's see. This one.
Great questions.
Yeah, they're excellent. This one came in from David. What was your thought process around DocuSign integration? It sounds like you decided to wait before rolling it out. Was it enabled at all in your initial launch? Was that due to the urgency we discussed earlier? Maybe you can speak to DocuSign and not just the functionality, but the decision process in and around not having it in the initial launch and now planning potentially to utilize it a little further.
Sure. So it was available in the initial launch in the sense that on a standard quote, so if it was a single document, it's already there. If you just want to send a quote out to a customer, if they're expecting it, if they know what they're getting, they can just click on the signature field and it automatically sends an email back just like you would expect. So that works great. Because of the timeline that we were on, we put together a standard proposal for some of our new customers. If we're putting together a large deal, in addition to that quote, we might want to have some marketing collateral attached to that. So we might have several documents and product descriptions that we want to include. We have our standard marketing packet, but that's at the time I think was 36 pages, and so it was a question of, do we really want to send out a 36, 37-page document with a quote to every customer that we send a proposal to on that approach. And we decided that we would wait until we could figure out how to make that template a little more dynamic or pare down our marketing document so that it wasn't such a large file. Does that make sense?
Sure, made sense to me. So it was an internal process, not a technical decision, if I heard you correctly.
Yep, exactly.
Gotcha. We had a couple more. A quick and easy one. What accounting platform are you pushing your information to?
We use NetSuite.
Gotcha.
And that automatically ties into to Salesforce as well. So everything that we want to feed from the opportunity record pushes directly over into NetSuite.
And then you spoke briefly about and this one came from one of our folks here in our Atlanta office. We've got some of our EnablePath folks on. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the improved visibility? You mentioned the quotes and being able to sync the primary quote to so that you're not overinflating the funnel and the forecasting is more accurate. Were there other gains in data visibility that you realized with the deployment?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And let me just, before I forget, just to backtrack on that NetSuite comment, there is an intermediate software piece that we use called Celigo. I'm not sure if NetSuite has a direct tie at this point. I think we had to use Celigo because it's kind of a middleware in between Salesforce and NetSuite. So I just wanted to clarify that for anyone who might be interested in looking at that. On the visibility side, we started to capture some other things that we didn't have before, like start and end date. So one of the things that Matt talked a lot about was addressing a need that we had directly, in that we sell subscriptions to schools. So if they sign on October 1st and the contract runs from October 1st of this year to September 30th of next year, then we need to know exactly when those start and end dates are. And so that's something that was a huge piece for us to start to capture. And we use that also to generate those renewal opportunities for next year, because that's based on the end date of the current subscription.
Got it. Thank you. Well, gentlemen and our attendees, thank you all very much for your participation today. For those of you, again, if this was your first of our webinar series, we hope that you'll join us again. Keep an eye out. We'll be having our spring release webinar and ecosystem news webinar coming up shortly. You can get in touch with any of the folks here directly. We will be posting this webinar. We record them all and post them on the EnablePath website in the Resource Center. You can see prior webinars posted there as well. So if you missed something, want to hear it again, or if you think somebody else could benefit from it, you can steer to enablepath.com and look us up and find us there. And once again, gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation, and enjoy the rest of your day.